In this video, I'm going to explain how dangerous drugs like Thorazine that cause me to lose the ability to walk for months on end. If you give me a week of Thorazine, it will affect my ability to walk. I'm not quite sure why, but it really interferes with my ability to walk, and it's extremely dangerous in my condition to be taking any of those type of drugs. But the state is probably gearing up to try to use me as much as possible and get me killed without understanding my disabilities and without having the proper funding to diagnose or treat somebody in my condition. Meanwhile, they're going to do it in a hurtful manner. They're not going to try to do it, with not discriminating. No, they're going to hurt me. They're going to inject me. They're going to throw me around. They're going to bust up my organs. They're not. I'm probably not going to be able to use the bathroom, so I'll probably get a blockage. They probably won't get it in time, so then I'll need surgery or I'll die or they'll cut me open. There's probably so much that will happen thanks to what I'm about to explain. Now, hopefully, I can stop it. Hopefully, we can try to do something here. But knowing that I am disabled and that's not going away, and people like to hurt the disabled and take advantage of the weak and the defenseless. I'll explain how this has worked before in Massachusetts and how it could be happening again. So I want you to take a look at this letter. Now, this is a letter from me and my roommate. We both got a prior letter. Now, the first letter usually deems that they're investigating you for not being able to take care of yourself. Now, I've explained that I'm disabled, and with Social Security and with work, I can take care of myself. But with landlords kicking me in my injured kidneys, with my kidneys having something wrong with it, with my GI having something wrong with it, and a prior neurological condition, with me not collecting Social Security, with me having such a large transportation bill due to my disability, at this time I cannot work. And with my kidneys and GI taking years for the doctors to do anything to help me, and with no funding or any of the pharmaceuticals I would need to maintain an injury, or not being able to buy simple things like a laxative, like I'm about to run out of my daily laxative stuff called compared to Miralax, that stuff is like $18.99 for a small bottle or in the 30 range for a big bottle, and you have to take it daily. If you have an income of zero, that's hard to manage. So with them cutting off all income from Social Security, all cash benefits, I can't use a shelter, I'm not receiving proper medical care. On top of that, people are kicking me in my injured parts. I'm getting injuries on top of injuries, and during COVID, they used me to keep commerce moving. While every other gas station was closed and they were underhanded, nobody would let me ever collect a dime. There was no transportation. The whole town of Rochester held me hostage. This town is literally trying to get me killed. They're not, when I go and ask them for help, you think the state is helping me? Well, for one, I don't want them taking over my life and hurting me. And if they send me a letter like this, that is not going to help me. They're not trying to help me. They're trying to actively take rights away. Because for them to deem me unable to take care of myself, they would have to know the injuries. But the problem is they don't have any yet. We got some, but we are still in the middle of working with doctors. So, what are they probably going to use? I don't know. Maybe a mental illness for my father and mother. They always got that in the barrel ready to go. Yeah, let's inject him with some drugs. Yeah, that's right. His mother called him psycho years ago. Yeah. Oh, that's right. He's a fire setter, too. Well, when did he set a fire? I don't know. The file says he was 12 years old and he was hurting animals with fire or something. We don't know. It just says that on the notes. But what really happened is I did a science experiment with slug slime, and my mother went nuts and put me in a hospital where I was injected and I was given pills, massive amounts. And on top of this, because my roommate wanted to tell a story, they double dosed me in the same hour with multiple dangerous medications like Thorazine, Seroquel, Trazodone, Xanax, Zyprexa, Ritalin, Wellbutrin. They were fluctuating pills in and out like crazy. And they double dosed me in the same hour, all because my roommate didn't like me making fun of him because he wanted to talk about cocaine. Yes, my roommate wanted to act like cocaine was some cool drug. And I said, why, do you want some? There's nothing cool about that. I was never big into cocaine. I was already on Ritalin, and that shit was like speed already. And the stimulants just don't work with me. They don't. It's not enjoyable. My heart rate, the feeling, anything about it, and I shake and I seize, and it's just not fun. Stimulants aren't for me. When I was on massive amounts of tranquilizers, I would need like an energy drink in the morning, and I did that for a long time. But I think that wasn't good for me either. But it did work, so I wasn't a drooling mess all the time. I mean, I'm talking about Thorazine, 600 milligrams of Seroquel, and eventually went up to 800. So I'm on 600 to 800 milligrams of Seroquel. We're talking about 150 or more, up to 300 milligrams of Thorazine. We're talking about 200 milligrams of Trazodone. And we're talking about some of these during the day. They wanted me taking like 100 milligrams of Seroquel during the day at one point in the afternoon. They wanted me taking Ritalin in the morning. They wanted me taking Xanax in the morning, afternoon, and night. They wanted me taking Lamictal and Risperidone morning, afternoon, and night. Then they moved it to afternoon and night. They wanted me taking all these pills all the way to age 5. I was on at least 5 to 6 medications at the age of 7 years old. Still, after an overdose, after my mother fucked up with the pills, I stopped, my breathing slowed down. I stopped being able to see out of my eyeballs. I literally couldn't see my own hand, and everything was a blur. I literally couldn't feel my own mouth. My whole mouth was numb. My mouth was dry too. It was terrible, terrible. I couldn't feel my hands. I couldn't feel my body. I couldn't stand up. I couldn't, when I was trying to scream for help, my mother kind of understood me, but can I help? Help! Something's wrong! Help! Help! Something's wrong! Help! Like that. So she knew something was wrong and she called for help. They told her to bring me to the emergency room, and then she said, they don't know what they're talking about. They don't know what they're talking about. Hung up on them. And then left me to die on a pile of newspapers that I crawled to by my father's feet as my breathing slows down and I pass the fuck out. Now, what was I supposed to be doing? Watching a movie. We just rented a movie, Batman Mr. Freeze. I couldn't wait to watch it. I sat to watch it. I'm like, yes, the movie was about to start, and then some pill reaction kicked in that the only thing I could compare it to is an extreme overdose. An extreme motherfucking overdose. I'm talking about mixing like Percocet, Xanax, weed with a shitload of other antipsychotics and pills. That's the closest thing I could ever match it to. Is it some type of massive overdose like that? Then when I woke up, I had a little change that was fucking bad in my nervous system that I couldn't quite tell what it was. My body seemed different. And for the next 30, 20 years, 20, no, it'd be 20, 22, 23, to the next 23, 25, something like that years, I had to figure out what my fucking mother did to me. Because she didn't want to talk about it in the doctor's office. She didn't want to get me medical treatment. When I tried to get medical treatment, when the teacher started talking to her about it, when the doctor started realizing that there was a coordination issue, you know what my mother did? She put me in ballet and moved me to a whole nother state on the other side of the country and dropped all doctor's advice, dropped all medical records, and tried to start over. But the doctors in Texas wouldn't buy her bullshit and they wouldn't work with her, so she put me in a place in New Mexico for attachment disorder. It was just a cabin. It's some bullshit cabin that you pay for to get your rich kids put away. Most of those kids were fine. They were just rich kids. That's it. Just some rich parents' kids. There was one other person that was adopted as well, but he was 13, an older kid. Just a lot of rich parents. I mean, they all were bragging about how their parents had millions of dollars. Every single kid there was a millionaire. I mean, goddamn, we just have a big cabin full of millionaires who like to play with rattlesnakes and black widows and tarantulas, and then you have a bunch of older kids that just play basketball, but there's no court, so they just toss it and get mad that there's no court, bitch and moan and get mad, and then fist fight in the corner. Meanwhile, we're playing, and then we build a house because we find a bunch of logs, and the big kids get interested finally. Or some of the big kids worked with the small kids where we took a bunch of mud and made a bike course. And there wasn't much for bikes, but they were able to find one or two bikes, and the fat kid and the skinny kid got to use them. I was never allowed to use the bikes. I was able to get the girl to let me try it one time when nobody was looking, but she said I wasn't allowed to tell anybody. I'm not sure why that was. This place was pretty fucked up. So yeah, then I got put there for 18 months. So I spent what, 2 years in Texas. Fucking, I spent like 2, 3 years getting drugged and having my mother act crazy and try to hide a crime. Then I spent another 18 months getting abused. Then I spent another like 6 months watching my father try to sell houses and try to vacation and watch fireworks, go on the beach. Meanwhile, my mother tries to homeschool me. Woohoo, that's fucking nuts. Yeah, my mother trying to homeschool me, completely bonkers. My mother was a lunatic. She couldn't homeschool somebody at my education level that needed the education I needed. Plus, where I just came from, their teacher got left. She didn't want to come up that mountain after 3 months. Yes, that mountain was like a 2, 3 hour drive to the first real hospital or grocery store or any civilization. It was far. I mean, we used to drive like an hour, 30 minutes just to get to this other little small shop. The only thing up there was this like burger place, Waterburger. There was one Waterburger, and that was like it on the mountain. There was barely anything for hours going down that mountain. So people did not want to deal with that. So the teacher ended up saying nope after 3 months. She probably came back after the place was built. I don't know. They must have got a. I mean, after they got the pool, extra buildings built and all that. I wasn't there for that. When I was there, it was a dirt lot full of red ant hills, rattlesnakes, a black bear, some cougars. There was one little old shack. We slept on the floor every night. We got 1 hour to be dragged to a bed, and then we had to get back up. We had an abusive black night staff that ran the place like he was a dictator. He even yelled at the other younger women staff that tried to correct him on like holding techniques to not choke the people out until they were blue. Because yes, some of the other staff members were concerned about people's face turning blue and then them passing out or gasping for air or bruises on some of these kids. Yes, they were a little bit concerned, but then, of course, this big bad giant black man would just get up in these 32-year-old women's face and say, fucking get out of here. What, do you want one of these? Fucking smash, he ruled the place. That's it. Nobody gave a fuck. This was the desert of a mountain. This was fucking nothing up there. They had one office for the office staff, and then they had our little corner of hell, what was a cabin, where you had a dining area with picnic tables. You had small little rooms, two to a room, but you weren't allowed to be in your room at all, ever. You were allowed 1 hour from like 5 a.m. to 6 a.m. or 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. on like a weekend or something like that. And you were allowed to sleep in no later than like 7 or 8 on any other day, and you were only allowed to go to your room at 5 a.m. They would drag you and bring you in. Now, some of the older kids that were allowed to be on the couches instead of the floors, they were older and complained a lot more and understood that some of this stuff was bullshit. So they would get violent and mad if you left them out there that long in the on the floor or something. So they always got a break with going back to their rooms early. I saw some of those older kids at midnight make it back to their room. Us younger kids would say, we want to go back to our rooms at midnight. We don't want to sit on this hard, cold floor until 5 a.m. But then they would say, go back to sleep, and yell at us that we have to go and sleep on a hard floor every night. 18 months of this shit, hard floor every night, every night, every night. 1 hour of bed, multiple. The youngest kids, we had to stay on the floor. I don't know what the fuck that was about. It was definitely the age. Some of their rules, there might have been a purpose, but the way it was implemented is fucking wrong. It's straight up abuse. Like the goldfish game where the staff, Toby, would have us all hold a book, and he would throw goldfish at us, and if the goldfish hit us, then he would strangle us with our own arms. Or if we looked up from the book because the goldfish hit us, or if we looked up from the book at any point because we saw something, or if we asked to use the bathroom or anything, then we would be strangled on the floor with our own arms and we wouldn't be allowed to breathe. Yes, that's real. I really had to go through that fucking shit. And then my father decided to sue them and just leave the damage on me and don't think about the future for me. Don't think about my losses. Don't think about what needs to be done. He needs to sell some houses. He needs to make his money back. And he wants to buy a house. And he wants to live his rich and happy, easy life. He doesn't want to make his life any harder just because he made a mistake. No, he'll say sorry. He'll try to get his money back. And he'll move on, right? Fuck his kid. It's a fucking orphan. Who gives a fuck about this kid? It's a fucking orphan. I mean, goddamn, my wife is allowed to drug him. I know he's no better than a dog. Actually, I think we're allowed to treat this kid worse than a dog. Yeah, if we did what we did to a dog, we'd be in jail. So this kid's not worth nothing. The state doesn't care about him. His worker doesn't care about him. The mother's drugging the shit out of him. And me, the father, I've already let the kid know I didn't want him to begin with. So this is out of my hands. Let's just let the kid fucking die. Whatever happens in the future, whatever happens next, we'll just let the fucking kid ride the wave. And then I just ride the abuse wave after more neglect and more abuse, more pills, more drugs, more ruler smackings, more drugs, more lacking education, no catching up, just bullshit after bullshit while my father tries to enrich his life. You know, he wants to enrich his life. So do we all, but we don't sacrifice our son's future to enrich our own lives. That is a evil thing to do. You don't enrich your own life at somebody else's expense, especially family, especially your son. No matter if he's adopted, if he's a foster child, doesn't matter. You don't enrich yourself at the expense of others. That's fucked up shit. And so anyways, when you look at these letters, what they're going to try to do is exactly that. They cleared David and said he can take care of himself. So they say a man who can't even clean up his own poop, and just recently, in the last 3 months, started to take care of going outside. He hasn't taken care of the house. He doesn't have a bedroom to sleep in. He couldn't chop off his own mattress. And just recently, I got hurt, and he snapped to trying to do stuff, and he spends more time outside the house, so that way the mold doesn't affect him, and he's doing great. And that's probably why he was able to get cleared. But I don't think I can make kidney stones or kidney problems disappear overnight, even though they are getting a little better. And as long as I still have 25 years of a neurological condition that causes seizures, they can try to turn that into whatever they want to try to disqualify me for taking care of myself. So what happens if they don't clear me? Well, first, they'll try to hospitalize me, what I don't think is the worst, but it won't be the right hospital, it won't be for my seizures, it won't be for my kidneys, and most likely they're going to make all my injuries much, much worse. They're not going to consider any of my injuries, any of my disabilities. They'll probably fuck me up for life. Not only that, they might force dangerous drugs into me that affect my ability to walk for life, like Thorazine. I'm having problems walking, as anybody around me can clearly see for the last couple years. I've made it through, I've pushed through, and I even worked and did better than other people while sometimes having injuries and having problems walking. I mean, I've even had seizures on the side of the road while cars ran over me. But I don't understand why the cars don't stop and fucking help me. Anyways, so I always overcome these. I go to the doctor, I go to Social Security, I try to go to work, I do everything that's necessary to survive. But when people throw you to the ground while you're injured and are allowed to kick you in the kidneys, that's not my fault that I got landlords kicking me in my injured parts. That I had no control over that. That letter had to be issued to the landlord. We sent it to him in the mail. We told it to him verbally. The attorneys and the city of Rochester, the two people here, both said, the Rochester department told us both, an attorney told us both to get it notarized and just hand it over with your rent, which we tried to do. And instead of him grabbing the letter, he grabs me, tosses me on the floor, and kicks me in the fucking kidneys, then bends down to give me a punch. Now, normally, I would fucking cripple that motherfucker. I would. Normally, I would fight back. Nobody's going to hit me, and then I'm not just going to sit and take it. But I am seriously injured already. I'm already using crutches and canes to get around. I'm on the ground, and if I throw one fucking punch, I'm going to be the one that gets this turned around on. Absolutely. You know that Rochester's just going to turn this around and say I instigated a fight or some bullshit. Who knows what the landlord would go with for a story if I even lift a finger. So instead, I held my gut, held the paper, and said, call the police, call an ambulance, like a whiny little bitch. Yes, I sound like the whiniest little bitch in the Ring camera video. And yes, it's all on the Ring camera video. You know, the original where he uses hate speech against, comes in, I tell him I have a letter for him and the rent, and Dave has the rent, but we need to give him a letter. That, and then he started using hate speech left and right. All that is left out. That, the door in the Ring camera doesn't pick it up. It stops by the time he comes in. But by the time I'm trying to hand him a letter, the camera and doors open so you can see it. and then he just turns around, grabs me, and you can see him do that. And all I'm doing is putting a letter in between the doorway, and it's not touching him. It's just on camera. It's in his door sight. He can see the damn letter. We've been trying to get him a letter because we have mold making us sick and putting us in the hospital. We've been sent to the emergency room several times because of something in the air in this apartment. And we can clearly see for 7 years gallons of water going in the walls, siding, and windows. We have repeatedly told him that there was mold rotting out these windows, allowing water to get in. And we're doing our best to try to keep it out, but no matter what we do, we cannot control we can't cut out your window. We can't get on the outside. We don't have ladders, and we don't have permission to do a lot of stuff. So we need him to do it, but he doesn't want to. He says it's dirt. It's just dirt, and allows gallons more of water to come in the building. So I took pictures, videos of water coming in, everything that proves it's not dirt. I took a close-up. We had experts look at it. It's black mold. So anyways, with all that video and all that proof now for 7 years of it, we just need to give him a letter. That's it. We just want to give him a letter. We just want to make sure he knows that we have now told him that this is a problem. I just need to make sure that that's known, and he is dodging it. He's trying his best. He's even on camera beating people up. Now, we're not the first assault. When he wants to evict somebody, sometimes he'll hit them, beat them up, and then when the police get called, he'll say that they punched him, and then that person can get out because the police were called to the premises. But see, if the tenant, let's say that the rent comes up and the landlord just beats the fuck out of a tenant, that's the problem. If the town of Rochester is corrupt, they will turn that around and say that that was a fight, or say that the police were called at the address, and then they'll evict the tenant for taking a beating. Yes, a landlord can come into your house to pick up your rent, beat the living fuck out of you, call the police, or when the police arrive, say that you started a fight, and then you get evicted and he keeps your money. Yes, it's a scam that multiple landlords try to portray. And I had a feeling that my landlord here was going to try some of that bullshit because he tried it on 2 other tenants. He came in there, assaulted the tenant, just beat the living fuck out of the tenant, and then when the police were called, said it was the other way around, even though he didn't have a mark on him. Somebody needs to fuck this guy up. But anyways, so my Ring camera was installed just in case somebody assaulted me, and I also have hidden cameras in the house, even though those don't always roll. Now I'm trying to make them work, but that's a big, long story. So, yeah, that way if the fucking landlord, you came on the Ring camera, you pressed the button, you came by. The Ring camera is allowed to record. I have no control, it's my security system. If you want to assault a disabled man on crutches and throw him to the ground and kick him in the kidneys, that's not the tenant's fault. I had a paper in my hand and I'm grabbing my gut. I didn't lay a hand on you. The paper didn't touch you. I'm just trying to give you a notarized letter that there's water leaking in your apartment. That's it here. I've tried to do this nightly for years. I've sent you letters. I've told you it verbally. Now there's a notarized letter. Please take it. And now I'm on the camera so that the camera can see that you're refusing to take a notarized letter that says that you need to repair your building. But instead, he turns around and starts beating the fuck out of the tenant again. This is violent. This is not safe. You got elderly people. I mean, he is literally making 84-year-olds do his landscaping for him. Yes, he came in saying he was going to punch an 84-year-old and evict an 84-year-old if that 84-year-old old man didn't do his landscaping on a steep hill because the landlord, who's in his 50s, literally, or maybe 60, maybe he just hit 60, or, he says it's too dangerous for any of his people or any of him to be on that hill. So he wants an 84-year-old to climb up a steep fucking hill because he doesn't have any landscapers or no maintenance anymore. Everybody keeps on bailing out on this fucker, and now he has nobody. He keeps on saying, they're not my maintenance, yet I'm supposed to let them in to do maintenance. I never complain, I never say anything, but he says they're not maintenance one minute, and then he says they're maintenance the next. I watched the maintenance assault a bunch of other people, and I made a complaint against that, and he said they're not my maintenance. Then the next point, I'm supposed to let these fucking crazy drunks into my house. They're just neighbors who are drunks and know a little bit of sticking stuff together. They're not trained maintenance. They don't have any. I mean, there was one of them, and he's gone. He bailed out on him. When I first moved in here, the first 2 years or two, there was somebody saying they're leaving, they're leaving, they're leaving, they're leaving, and then they were gone. And that was the only real maintenance for this place. It's going completely nuts over here. I mean, this landlord has not maintained his buildings. He has not invested in his buildings. His tenants are getting sick, being diagnosed with asthma, heart conditions, breathing conditions. The air is thick. When guests come over, they complain of headaches, nausea, vomiting, all different types of health problems. These places are toxic. And it's this side of the building where it's basically at. You can clearly see that when you drive up to the back of the building. You can see where the black mold has done most of the damage. So, and it's in the walls, in the siding, and all over those windows on this side. And it just happens my apartment is king mold zone. Yes, I have the most moldy apartment he owns. Out of every single apartment this landlord owns, I have the most dangerous one. And I did not know this until I started looking into it. And I said, oh God, great. I have the most deadly. I mean, I've had people say I'm definitely going to die if I stay living here. But yet I don't see any other options at the time. The shelter won't let me stay for any period of time until I have documentation of my disabilities. And even then, if I stay in the shelter and something happens, I'm not sure if I'll ever get an income enough to move back into an apartment. And if something does happen where the shelter's closed down, like up here in Rochester, they throw people out even when it's below like 50 degrees. I've seen that shelter be closed when there's snowstorms coming in. That's fucked up shit. If it's not time, it's not time. They need permission from the city to open up early, and the city usually says no. It's fucked up shit. And the only shelter is in Somersworth, not Rochester. So it's just not a place to be with my disability. So I'm pretty sure they're not going to give me a letter like this. Instead, they're going to deem me unable to take care of myself. Then they'll put me in the hospital, try to sedate me with a bunch of drugs, and then kick me out to the street to die someplace while they force drugs into me. That's probably going to be the plan. They'll probably say, well, you could have stayed at a shelter. Meanwhile, the shelter says, no, he can't. There'll probably be some bullshit like that, and then I'll probably be frozen. They'll find me dead of exposure, and the town of Rochester will say, see, I told you he couldn't take care of himself, even though they'll be the ones causing my death. My father, my mother, pharmaceutical companies, past doctors, and neglect. Oh, and don't forget, just stupid ass decisions from town and state and government officials. They're just trying to save money and trying to save the rich. Oh, this landlord buys a lot of properties and, he pays us a lot in taxes. So let's cover this landlord's ass and let these people get murdered. Yeah, we've already had a couple old fucks die, but they're low income. Those places are low, they're cheap. Those people can't have any real money or family or anything. No, they're disposable, those people over there. No. That 27-year-old, he's a fucking angry asshole. Let him die. Oh, Zach, the 31-year-old? His mother says he's a crazy. Let him die. Oh, the 84-year-old? He's a sex offender. Let him die. Oh, the fat guy on an oxygen tank? Oh, yeah, he only has one sister. Let him die. Oh, the guy downstairs? Well, he's moving out after a year and he'll never find out. Oh, the one upstairs? He doesn't even speak English. Let him die. Oh, the one across the hall? He's fucking a cunt-ass loser. He just works for the military. He's low income, too. Let him die. These people just continue to get sick after the, 5th, 7th, 8th year, and this building is by far the worst. They just moved a young kid downstairs that's guaranteed to have his life shortened by at least 40 years if he spends at least 7 years here. And I'm not sure how much money somebody that young can really make in today's world. I'm not sure if you could really make enough money to jump to another apartment, because you got to pay for this apartment and you got to save money for another apartment. So that's something very difficult if you're young. Now, I'm disabled, what's a bonus. So they're definitely going to fuck me good. I'm going to be dead soon, yeah. Not only have I got my own family poisoning me through childhood and doing crazy-ass things, I bet that the state continues to try to avoid responsibility as well. I mean, Massachusetts, you think that they're going to try to take responsibility for any of the things like what happened to me in Lowell Treatment Center? I mean, they try to get me to sign a non-disclosure so that way I couldn't sue them. That was their first response. Their response wasn't to help me with this, with the trauma from this guy coming in my room and trying to rape me. It wasn't. It was fire the woman and get him to sign this paper. That was their only concern in Lowell Treatment Center. A guy comes in my room and tries to rape me for 3 days straight, and when it's on camera, and the third day there's a big problem, then they just say they're going to fire her and sign this non-disclosure, so that way you can't sue us. That's their only concern in Massachusetts as a treatment center. I'm coming there needing treatment for PTSD, and I'm living on the streets while having a bunch of problems I'm trying to figure out and don't understand. And your only thing you're going to talk to me about of this rape is, can I sign the paper of the non-disclosure with you guys? You guys don't tell me how to process it. You guys don't tell me how to deal with it. You guys don't try to help me with it. No, instead you guys just try to get me out of there quicker, and you try to get me to sign paperwork as a non-disclosure. Fucking great. Great state hospital. Great. Lowell Treatment Center, they try to get me raped. Not only that, when I was 12 years old, I was in Lowell Treatment Center, and I received a double dose of medication. That was the one I was talking about earlier in this video. That one really bothers me still to this day. I want to get a support group going in like a church basement where people who have been abused by the medical industry and by the government can get together and just open up like, hey, yeah, I was in Lowell Treatment Center at 12 years old. My roommate was telling stories, and the staff thought it was necessary to give me Thorazine, Seroquel, Trazodone, Xanax, and Benadryl, just a cocktail of drugs twice in the same hour. When I told the staff members that I already took my medication and what they're doing could be harmful, they smiled and held me down and gave me the double dose of drugs. At this point, I was continuously drugged and lethargic after this point. I did not know how to deal with it. And that was not my first experience. I went back to this treatment center many years later to try to get help while living on the streets with a condition I didn't quite understand. And instead of getting help, they let another person who was sexually dangerous, that was in 8 rooms down from me, come into my room repeatedly, come into my bed and try to put stuff up my bum. And I would have to grab his throat, throw him to the ground, throw him out of my room, get staff, tell him not to let this person in my room. Then the kid would come back in my room. I would hit him in the face. I would get him out of my room. I had to repeatedly yell at this kid. My roommate was about to knock his ass out. We were all going to kill this kid. I had to tell them, hey, I think this kid's really mentally ill. I don't think I should anymore hurt him. I think I should just grab him by the throat and throw him out of the room. As soon as I feel my bed vibrate, we should strangle this kid and bring him out of the room. But we don't want him actually getting hurt. But we need to remove him from our room. So we repeatedly try to get staff to stop letting this kid try to rape me, and it doesn't work. So on the third day, I grab him by the neck, I throw him to the ground in front of every staff and in front of the doctors and everything. I cock my arm back and I go ready to knock his throat into tomorrow. But I actually hold it back. I remember this kid's mentally ill, so I stop and I stay there until the staff get involved. At this point, they check the cameras, they check everything I tell them, and then they apologize to me. And then don't forget, they inject me with drugs, and they do that once again. I'm used to that at this point. And they apologize to me for allowing a rape to continue, where this kid tries to stick his finger up my bum, and I have to try to grab him and strangle him out of my room. I shouldn't have to do this. You know how traumatic it is for me to hurt a mentally ill kid, or I'm going to get hurt? It's either I get hurt, and this kid tries to continuously rape me, or I grab this kid by the throat and throw him out of my room. He doesn't speak. He doesn't understand. This kid's a nut. But the staff members are in charge. They're the ones, and they were notified hundreds of times over and over by me, and other people got involved. They could hear. I mean, there was at least 5 people getting pissed off at these staff members for me, including me. This is the state, so they're probably going to try that again with me. They're probably going to deem I can't take care of myself. They're not going to take any of my injuries into consideration. They're not going to consider any of my disabilities I'm talking about. They're going to ask me to prove everything. If I can't prove it, they're going to try to get me killed. They're probably going to give me improper care and say they're trying to help me. They're probably going to get me hurt while helping me. Oh yeah, I'm helping you, I'm helping you. Oh, now you're more hurt? Well, I'm helping you, now you're more hurt? Oh, let's drop them off in the woods. And then they just drop me off on some street I never heard of. I start freezing to death. I go into the shelter. They throw my ass out for being disabled. And then I die on a sidewalk someplace. And then they say, see, I told you you can't take care of himself, after they just tortured me for weeks. That's probably what is going on, because I would have received a letter like this as well. I have not received a letter that says that I am cleared yet. And the only reason why I can't take care of myself right now is a neurological condition, a year of some type of kidney problems, and a GI problem that just continues. I've had stomach issues and esophagus issues for 20 years, and the neurological condition for 25. And not once has anybody given a flying fuck about trying to get me my Social Security, which, if I had my Social Security, I could take care of myself fine. All I need to do is pay this goddamn rent, go to the doctor, and soon enough my kidneys and GI will be better, and then I can go back to cleaning my house and cooking for myself, and then as things get better than that, I can try to even go to work. But if I keep on getting injured or overworking myself, that's not a good mix while being massively disabled and injured. And that's what they want me to do. They want me either to work like 50 hours killing myself, or they want to claim that I can't take care of myself, or they don't want to give me Social Security or any benefits and then claim that it's my money financial situation. Meanwhile, they pay out all these fuckers under this world for having almost nothing wrong with them. I mean, the guy who drives me home, he's anxiety and PTSD. I said, what do you have so much anxiety about? He goes, oh, just born with it. I said, oh, well, I have anxiety because my mother kept on poisoning me, made up stories about me, a black guy strangled me, I got no education, and I had to move my whole life every 2 years. Oh, wow, yeah, that's different. Whoa, shit, kid. Yeah, you must have some serious PTSD, too. Yeah, I do. But that's not even the tip of the iceberg. The OD I'm talking about and all the drugs my mother gave me did something to my body where I shake, I bump into furniture, I lose the ability to talk, and the cold causes seizures and lack of movement, muscle cramps, and different types of spasms. There's also a lot of drug history with my mother giving me drugs. Everything from Thorazine to Lamictal. My nipples were leaking milk from Risperidone. My mother kept me on it. My nipples were leaking milk, and my mother was like, that's fine, just keep them on it. The meds weren't helping. The more pills I took, the harder my life got, and that was easily to see for anybody who came in. I was having many adults come in and talk to me about this issue of my mother being a crazy nut, me being over-medicated, and something needed to be done about my mother acting crazy. I had this talk with many people. They would come up to me and say, poor kid, poor kid, poor kid, poor kid. My brother, teachers, friends of the family, just random people, just people all over. Anybody who met my mother, even other mothers who met my mother for 1 minute said, poor kid. I don't want you hanging out with him because of his mother. There was a kid in the neighborhood, not my next door neighbor, but there was another kid I only met once. Because my mother was acting like a lunatic, driving up and down the street, yelling out a window like a complete moron, and I got permission to visit a friend, and she's going nuts again, when I went back the next day to school and asked him if I could play with him again, he said, yeah, but my mother doesn't like your mother. I said, what? She goes, I told my mother how you got permission, and I waited in the driveway, and you did get permission, so I told her that, and then she saw your mother screaming like a lunatic. She doesn't know what's going on, but she knows your mother's crazy, and she doesn't want anything to do with you because of your mother. I said, oh, well, that's not the first time I heard that, and it won't be the last. I heard it from my brother, family members, teachers. I brought it, my mother wrote a crazy note to a teacher, and she goes, what's up with your loony mother? I mean, I watched my mother act loony in front of me. I watched my mother act loony in front of my father. I watched my mother get drunk and act loony, and my mother and father fought, and my father had to tell her to shut up. You're not the queen of the house. And she said, no, I'm queen, and Zach's nothing but a dog to me, and just a lot of crazy shit that she was holding in deep down because she was a complete nut. But yet none of that matters. Instead, they're going to try to hurt me some more and not let me live my life. There's no way I'm going to be able to collect my Social Security. There's no way I'm ever going to be able to live a decent life because somebody else wanted to pump my future into his own bank account, into his own happiness vial, whatever you want to use as a metaphor.